Ads ruining your favourite cycling podcast? Sick of shallow bike reviews? Escape Collective is different. We deliver the content you crave without the distractions. We're member supported, and that means ad-free podcasts, independent and honest reporting, and real conversations within a passionate community. It's a better way to experience cycling media. Join us at escapecollective.com/join.
Hello and welcome back to the How the Race Was Won podcast. I'm Dane Cash, and it's Monday here. We're recording on a rare Monday. We usually record on a Sunday, but we wanted to give you as much analysis as possible. So we watched both of the first two stages of the Dauphiné this time. Bike racing analyst extraordinaire Cosmo Catalano. How are you?
Is that true, or were you doing something else this weekend?
I was doing something else this weekend. That is true. But I did watch the bike racing because I'm dedicated to my job.
Yes, yeah, of course.
I also got married.
Yes, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, I didn't let that. I didn't let the bike racing keep me from getting married. But on the flip side, I didn't let getting married keep me from, watching highlights. I made sure I watched the first stage finish, and then this morning I got up and I watched the bike race. You know, because I'm a dedicated cycling fan.
You may have watched the bike race, but you may not have really seen the finish because it was very foggy.
That is accurate. Got some mist today at the Dauphiné. Well, first of all, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today, just to give folks a primer. So we are only two stages into the Dauphiné here, which means we've got two stages to break down. We'll tell you how those races were won, but also rather than spending a whole show doing that, we will break down a few questions, Q&As, if you will, that were sent over to us on the Discord, and then we'll look ahead to what's coming up because the Dauphiné will continue with some interesting stages, as well as the Tour de Suisse, by the way, coming up here. So lots of Tour de France tune-up racing on the men's side, which is exciting because it's like 3 weeks away, the Tour de France, which is kind of nutty. Yeah. Say that every year about this time. Women's racing.
We say it extra early this year because
that is true.
We have an Olympic Games.
That is true.
It's more important than the Tour de France, according to the people in actual France, whose opinions matter the most.
I mean, I buy that. They get the Olympics. I mean, they happen once every 4 years, and they're in France. Well, less than that. Less often than that. Women's side, we got Tour Britain coming up, and then the Tour de Suisse women as well. So it is a busy time of the season, which is me foreshadowing a question that we're going to answer in our Q&A section here. But first, Cosmo, what's the headline from the first two stages of the Critérium du Dauphiné?
One headline for both stages?
You could do whatever you like. Okay. It's our show.
I kind of want to do like a troll headline. Sort of be like, after two stages, Vingegaard and Pogačar still not in attendance.
Oh.
Yeah. But no,
shots fired at the start list.
It's not. I think the two stages have been pretty good so far. I think we got a exceptionally fast sprint, which is not always the most interesting thing, especially when Trek really nails the lead out, which they did. Mads Pedersen only had to really pedal hard and avoid the one teammate in front of him in the finale. He did that and won the stage. Stage two, he actually fought really hard to stay in the yellow jersey, despite the fact that it was clearly not going to be his day. We saw Bora kind of ramp up the pace and then suddenly stop around 6K. Maybe that gave him false hope that he could just see the back of the peloton for that much longer. But eventually Bora and Uno X kind of really ramped it up, went fast. They caught late break Bruno Amarai, I think, 250 meters to go. Again, hard to tell because it was really foggy. Then out of the mist emerged Magnus Kort Nielsen with Roglic, same time finish. And Matteo Jorgensen actually led the peloton up, trying to keep pace with Kort Nielsen when the attack went.
It was a nice win from Kort Nielsen of the Uno X team, which has done a lot of work to try to put themselves into position to get some big wins this year. They've been really close. It was nice to see Magnus Kort pull it off at this biggest maybe of 1 week stage races on the year. It's in contention maybe with Paris-Nice and Tirreno. We don't need to get into that. I'll just say it's a big one. It's a good win. All right, so some talking points out of those first couple of stages. So first of all, let me defend this start list, or at least one rider on it, by saying that I think Primož Roglič has a good chance at this Tour de France. And I think you can't sleep on him. I think, first of all, he has already been so close to winning the Tour de France. Second of all, he does not have a Giro in his legs. And as dominant as the Giro winner looked, it's really hard to do the Giro Tour double. So I think Primož Roglič is worthy of being just not getting shade thrown at him by my co-host.
Is it shade? Is it shade to point out that the two riders who have defined the GC at the Tour de France for the past 2 years are not there?
I think it's a little shade.
I don't think it's shade. I think
you're implying that Roglič is inferior, and I think it's just a little shade. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
I like Roglič. I like him a lot. I was a little surprised that he didn't take this finish because this is a Primož Roglič finish. Primož Roglič. Wow, that is hard to say. Primož Roglič finish. It's also a Magnus Cort Nielsen finish, but I wanted to see a little GC pride. But again, it's very early. We're still talking about a GC separated by 2 and 3 seconds, so not a ton of gain from there.
And to that point, I think generally when Roglič takes these finishes, it's just a group of GC riders, whereas Cort being there, he's very fast, and if he can survive, that's the kind of thing that he will win. Second of all, in terms of the GC battle, I don't think Roglič really minds that he finished second today. I'm sure he wanted to win the stage, but in terms of preparing for the Tour de France and trying to win this GC, I think he's in pretty good shape so far. Maybe we'll sound silly tomorrow or the next day if something happens to Primož Roglič, but so far he looks fine. But okay, first let's talk about let's talk about that sprint where Lidl Trek just dominated the lead out in the last couple hundred meters. You remember Jonathan Milan?
I know him.
A week ago? Yeah. So Lidl Trek has really, this is a team that has pretty suddenly, I would say, become the sprinting team because there's no one else really challenging them for that title at the moment that I can think of. And it's a really interesting change from 10 years ago, even 6 or 7 years ago, we had this Cav, Greipel, Kittel hegemony, which is a word I don't get to use very often, so I'm going to take this opportunity, where they would dominate everything for like a decade. And in the last 5 years, we have seen a rider look really good for like a year, and then someone else comes along. It could be Dylan Groenewegen, it could be Sam Bennett, who... We'll get to that in a second. At the moment, it looks like both of Trek's riders, Peterson and Milan, are up there. And there's a few others as well, but that it really puts into perspective how dominant Cav and Kittel and Greipel were those years they won 4 or 5 stages of the Tour de France. That was, it seemed pretty rote at the time.
Did Greipel,
but it really wasn't.
Did Greipel ever take 5 stages in a tour, though?
Didn't I say 4 or 5 there?
Did he take 4? Greipel?
I thought he took 4 that one year.
Okay.
It was kind of like, oh my gosh, he's a little older and he's doing his thing. Let's check.
I'm not trying to shade Masters cyclocross rock star Andre Greipel, who's one of my favorite riders just because he's super versatile, it appeared to love doing teamwork for his squad in races.
Loved charging up the Koppenberg.
Yeah. He's a fun guy to watch on a bike. Even now, like his reels, genuine stoke bunny hopping barriers in Masters cross races in Germany. But I in my mental basket of dominant sprinters from 10 years ago, I do not have an Andre Greipel basket there. So
to me, despite all of the things you just said, that sounds like shade. Okay, also 4 stages at the 2015 Tour de France,
all right.
Not 5.
Go Andre Greipel. Stoked.
11-time stage winner at the Tour. 7-time at the Giro. He's a pretty talented guy.
I'm saying he's definitely a top sprinter, but I don't have him in that
Kittel and Cav had more dominance when they were dominant. Yeah, I think that's accurate to say, for sure. In any case, that was what we had. We had these periods of massive dominance, and then now we have riders looking really awesome, but not for sustained periods yet. So we'll see if maybe Lidl Trek can change that. They look well positioned to because they've got such a strong a combination of lead out and speed. I mean, on that first stage, Milan was in. That was an unintentional slip up. On that first stage, Mads Petersen was in really good position, and he didn't look like there was no challenge to him really from Sam Bennett, who never really came close to coming around. So both the lead out and the speed of their top end guys, Milan and Petersen, is there.
It was a super fast sprint. I think the last kilometer was literally just Gibbons. Like, I think Kirsch pulled off right before the red kite or maybe right after it. But, I mean, they were moving. And so there were a lot of people kind of in touch. Like, it's really easy in a huge group of riders to go very, very fast. The problem is, like, it's really hard to go faster than that. You get to the front and suddenly there's this big hand pushing you back.
Physics.
Yeah. And it's so I think it's a lot of people maybe felt more confident in their positions than they should have. Is part of that. Like, I forget who it was. I think it was like the Austrian national champion was right on Petersen's wheel, and then like had a shifting issue and was like in the middle of the group, not able to pedal, like waving his arm, like, oh, I've had a mechanical, and not losing ground very quickly. Just to give you an example of like how much speed there was just on inertia in that group. But as far as Lidl Trek goes, I think a lot of it is. I was struck by something that I think Ed Toons said in the Giro, that like they're a bunch of really beefy guys who, know how to ride their bikes hard, whether it's in the classics or whether it's in the kind of the run into a sprint. And so, put some strong dudes together, give them a mission. They seem to like hanging out and working with each other. Yep. And yeah, there isn't, like you said, there's not a lot of other teams that can challenge them like that. You think, even the Giro, with Merlier looking very good, it was him and Bert van Leeuwenberger, and not a ton of other organization. Like, they really had to kind of find their ways to win. And I think maybe there isn't a Tim Merlier style setup, maybe with Sam Bennett, but I don't know, at the Dauphiné.
Let's talk about Sam Bennett, because second place for him a few years ago would have been not good enough. But this is a rider who went from his really great Tour de France to a lengthy down period, and I for one have been really like looking forward to seeing him get back to this level. I thought it was cool that he signed with Decathlon, because it was a team that did not have much sprint prowess before, and he looks great. I mean, first of all, we've talked about this already, but he won a bunch of stages in Dunkirk, and now he seems to be on the cusp. Looks really strong. Sort of thing where, if maybe the lead out plays out a little differently, or who knows. He certainly seems like he could win a sprint stage right now, which is a lot more than you could have said for him 2 years ago. His team has been the subject of some Q&A action before on this pod. Decathlon, we talked about how they're having a heck of a year. And I think we've seen the last 2 or 3 days, Bennett, new signing, coming really close. The very next day, Bruno Armorai, again, coming very close, another new signing. So clearly they're doing something right in the scouting department with this team. Bringing on new riders took them a little while to come up with a way to replace the Romain Bardet GC focus, but I think they've done a heck of a job, and yeah, we've seen it over and over again. So good on you, Decathlon. In the end, though, Magnus Kort and his team, another team that has had a really nice 2-day period, because Jonas Abrahamsen won the Brussels Cycling Classic yesterday when we're recording, so that's Sunday. And yeah, that's a pro team, second division team that has performed, I would say, at the level of a medium to lower tier World Tour team this year. They've really ridden quite well, or at least they've put their riders into position to win. They've gotten a lot of close calls, and now they're starting to get the wins. So good on them.
I think they are a sleeper cell for Denmark-Norway reunification. And this is kind of how it starts: is you get all the Danish and Norwegian guys on the same team, then they start winning races. The next thing you know, we have King Canute the 17th lording over both domains.
Sick North Sea Empire reference there. And if you don't know what that is, go read about it on Wikipedia. It's fascinating.
No, I love seeing Uno X take wins, because they do so much animating, and it's like fun animating. It's good animating. Yeah. It's not making an attack and then screaming at the guy behind you for not pulling through. It's like
gesticulating.
I'm gonna smash the race right now, and we're gonna see what happens. And I think you do that enough with the right guys in the right situation, you're gonna win some races.
It's usually at the so-called pointy end of the race. It's not like they do this too, but they don't often just spend a ton of time in the early break that isn't going to go anywhere. A lot of the times the things that we're talking about are them attacking when it matters. And sometimes it works. And it worked for Magnus Cort waiting for the sprint this time. And I think that's another thing actually to talk about, where being on that smaller team, I think it's a little bit of an advantage in a finish like this, where no one is expecting Uno X to do the work. And so Magnus Cort can kind of wait for Bora to help chase down Bruno Armorai. And then he's in that position to take a very clear win from the time perspective, because he was pretty far ahead of Primož Roglic. Mm-hmm. Not a very clear win from a visuals perspective, though.
For all we know, he grabbed onto somebody's jersey pocket and then was just like, wee!
Yeah, couldn't have done anything.
Couldn't see anything. I think someone would have complained about that by now,
probably,
if it had happened.
Very soupy a cloud there at the finish, impossible to see much. And I think Ant McCrossan had a hard time identifying who won the stage, but he did it pretty quickly after, so I was pretty impressed with that.
The ASO events are pretty good with, I believe they're pretty good with the race radio, so I think most commentators have a French guy shouting out largely accurate information within a couple seconds of when it happens.
Yeah, that was good. It was because it was a very hard to see what was happening, and pretty quickly after McCrossan was telling us who it was that won accurately, because sometimes they're inaccurate about it, and not this time. So good on you, Ant McCrossan, and also the radio folks over at the Dauphiné. And that's kind of all we have for the Dauphiné, because it's only been 2 stages so far.
Stages.
Deux
étapes.
Yep. Deux étapes. And let's just throw to a quick break before we do any Q&As. Okay, I put out a call for Qs in the Discord, in our Discord channel. And I got some good ones.
All right.
And we have some time to answer them today because, we're only 2 stages into the Dauphiné, and it just seems like a great time to take some questions and maybe break down the cycling season as a whole and a couple of other things. But first, I want to answer this question from Jace, who is a staffer here at Escape. And he asked a question that I'm going to take an opportunity to answer, because I'd like to give some heralding here. And it's a question that has nothing to do with cycling. I'm going to try to kind of, make it a little bit, at least analogous. Jace's question: who was the unheralded participant at your recent wedding? First of all, I want to give some quick heralding to some of the riders or participants who were expected to do well. There's the GC stars who lived up to the hype. Great speeches from my dad, my sister-in-law, my brother, my friend Brian, helping to plan a bachelor party, some shenanigans. Our officiant, who's a friend of ours from college, knocked out of the park at the ceremony. They were the expected to do well GC stars who knocked out of the park. And so good on you, all of you, for all of that. Unheralded participant who I'm going to herald, who certainly deserves it. And I don't know that everybody at the wedding saw this happening, so that's why I'm going to herald him. My future brother-in-law, because he's getting married to my sister-in-law, ran some interference in a parking lot to make sure that those who were coming to our ceremony were able to park in a public lot that we wanted to make sure we had to ourselves. And he just made sure that nobody came and parked there. And he did a damn good job of it.
Appropriated a public resource for your private event.
Don't make it sound like a bad thing. So yeah, thanks.
Just said that commissars might have feelings about this.
Fortunately there were no commissars to see. It was too misty. Halfway up Flagstaff Road. Cyclists in Boulder will know this place. So thanks for that. Good job doing that. That's the kind of thing that deserves some heralding. Okay, let's talk cycling now. First of all, Jules DB, could we see Vingegaard riding in support of Kuss or Jorgensen if they shine at the Dauphiné at the Tour de France? I actually think the very next comment in our Discord channel is my answer to this question. From Jefferson, I think Kuss is going to be their plan B in case Vinny isn't ready. I think that's accurate, because I think Vingegaard is going to be their guy at the Tour. Maybe I'll sound silly in 1 week, but I think they're banking on that at the moment. And if not him, then I think it'll be Kuss as a backup. Cosmo, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really tough for top Grand Tour riders to switch into a domestique role kind of at the drop of a hat. I'm trying to think of some great examples off the top of my head, and I'm not. Chris Froome obviously has no interest in doing anything but trying to win a Grand Tour, as he will tell any interviewer. Simone and way back in the 2003 Giro, Simone and Cunego really couldn't work it out, even though, Cunego was clearly the strongest guy. And domestique it's really different. Like you look at the way Sepp Kuss performed at the Vuelta or I think it was the Giro last year. He does stuff like, he's going fast. He's setting up an attack for one of his teammates, for Roglic in this case. And then he's going to drop back and recover a little bit and catch on to the next group and kind of like pay attention to what's going on in front of him. Maybe he's going to move up to the next group. Maybe they're going to have to set pace again. There's just a constant like race awareness that you have to have. You have to really have the ability to be like, oh, I'm gonna trash myself these next 30 seconds because this is the right time for that to happen. Whereas the GC mindset is very much a don't do work and then go hard to the finish when it makes sense. And I think it's really challenging for top guys to make that switch. Froome and Wiggins, again, they couldn't really. Was Wiggins ever super helpful for Froome? I don't think so. You could argue that Froome was somewhat detrimental to Wiggins at times. So I don't think it's a cool story, but I don't think it happens that often. So that's kind of why I don't see the Vinigo riding in support of storyline. My
thought would be that if Ingego goes, it's getting kind of free reign, right? Like it's do what you can. Okay, Northern Rights asks, is this the dullest point of the season in that far too much focus is put on one bike race and far too many column inches are written about eventual winners, which is usually from a pod of two people at best?
I like this question.
That last bit might be accurate. And yeah, maybe far too much focus is put on one bike race. However, I mean, I can tell you that the amount of interest in the Tour de France from readers or listeners, as it were, is absolutely, it does dwarf the rest of the conversation. I mean, it's not really close in terms of the interest. To the main question, I would say it's not the dullest point of the season, but enough shade has been thrown at what I think is the dullest point of the season by my co-host in recent shows. And we have enough listeners from the place that hosts that part of the season that I'm just going to leave it there. Yeah.
No, I don't think this is necessarily boring. It depends on what you're into, right? There's still really cool and interesting stuff that happens in bike races. I think the issue is less that this part of the season is boring and more that the Tour de France is excessively important relative to the rest of cycling. I think it's only as boring as you make it. There's the Tour de Suisse I had some Instagram reels that are not currently live. Maybe I'll talk to the Tour de Suisse people about that again. But like, you can see things at the Tour de Suisse you're never going to see at the Tour de France. Like the camera team will follow a domestique from the moment he takes a bottle from the car to the moment he rides into the group and hands bottles off to everybody. Like uninterrupted cut. Something you'd never see at the Tour de France because people would be like, why are you showing us this? And that sort of thing gets a ton of attention because it's not what you normally see. And it's so, I guess if you're looking for top storylines and to satiate an audience who wants to hear Tour de France stories, it's going to be pretty dull. But there's still cool stuff out there, and people should make it and get it in front of these Tour de France hungry people, and maybe eventually some of it will break through their thick skulls, and they'll see that there are cool things that happen in bike racing all the time.
Okay, one more question for you, and I think this is directed mostly to you. I have an answer, but yeah, now that Sylvain Chavanel has retired, who has inherited the ubiquitous breakaway crown? Or will we look back on his never-to-be-equaled achievements in awe, the same way we will, presumably, look back on Pogs?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I have an answer for that quite yet. The thing that made Chavanel special was that he had that complete comfort with suicidal attacking that every breakaway needs, but he would periodically be like the fastest guy in the peloton. Maybe not to the top of Mont Ventoux, but there were some days where he would do things in the bike race and there was nothing anyone else could do about them. And that's a pretty unique combination. I'm not sure there's anyone who really has that ability now. And if they do, they're not in a position where they are being asked to use it. They're probably being a, top 5 GC contender instead of being a really interesting race animator.
I would say that the breakaway crown was maybe held, but already past tense by Thomas de Gendt for a little while. Different kind of rider. I mean, both of them are great at breakaways, but different kind of breakaway rider from Sylvain Chavanel. But I think he deserves some credit for having that crown for quite a while, actually. Because I think after Chavanel, then de Gendt became the breakaway king. I don't know that anyone is that now, though. So I think the crown is unworn, maybe at the moment. Maybe somebody will crop up, but yeah, Chavanel was pretty unique, and then I think de Gendt was also pretty unique as somebody who was so successful from the break. It's hard to do to be that successful from a break.
Yeah, I think it's the riders are out there. I think there's just still a very monolithic development process where if you are maybe good enough to finish in the top 10 of a Grand Tour, that's what people make you do instead of making you do fun stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Cues have been answered. Hope you enjoyed our little Q&A. Let's look ahead to what's coming up because the Dauphiné is really, it's only just begun. Literally, it's only 2 stages so far. Let's see. Stage 3, another similarly hilly stage with an uphill finish. Looks pretty breakaway friendly, or maybe, Primož Roglič at the last second. Stage 4, we got a time trial. And it looks like a power TT guy, friendly TT. It's 34.4K. There are some rolling hills, but I think it's going to be great for, our 2 GC favorites at this race happen to be very good at time trials.
It is interesting to note that it is more uphill and hilly toward the end. So there's a big pacing component. It is, if you ever raced a TT on a bike with relatively good fitness, the first 5-10 minutes, you feel amazing. Like you're a hero. Like no one could ever possibly go this fast on a bike. You are so good. And then about 15 minutes in, all of that catches up with you and you feel bad. And pacing is maybe a little bit underappreciated in time trials. See also the hour record where no one ever seems to be able to keep their pace from early in the race.
I don't think this is going to happen, but with Roglič in the race and there being a pacing concern, maybe we'll get a helmet half askew on his head. I don't think it's going to happen though. I think he's got this.
Get one of the new super curvy ones, and it's just starts turning sideways mid stage,
and he looks really distraught.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. I think Roglič and Evenepoel are going to smash this thing. There's a hilly stage to follow, maybe reduced sprint, maybe regular sprint. Yeah, stage 6. Could be some GC action because they finish on a very steep finishing climb, the Collet d'Allevar, or category climb, 8.1% average gradient. And that is a gradient that you can't really ride. You can't just hide behind someone and draft them at that gradient. So going to see some changes, I think, on the GC. Stage 7, finishing at Albertville, another extremely steep finish, 9.3% average gradient to that finishing climb. Somewhat amusingly, I think you get a great perspective on the way that profiles are drawn because the climbs look the same in the art because the scales are different.
Yeah, they don't do y-axes well.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of consistency there. So yeah, and then stage 8, the final stage of the race, yet again, another climber-friendly day. The finishing climb, not quite as steep to Plateau des Glières, but 7.1% is not nothing. And they end at a not insignificant 1,447 meters, almost 5,000 feet. So yeah, 3 back-to-back-to-back GC days in that finish of the race. I hope we're going to get a great battle between Remco and Roglic and possibly some of the other riders in the GC department at this race. Maybe Sepp Kuss. He's pretty good. We'll see.
Wasn't there a guy who won the last 1 week stage race in France at this 1 week stage race in France?
Yes. And a lot of the focus in this team may go to his other American teammate, but you're right.
He did win a Vuelta, which is also pretty legit. But
he did.
Matteo Jorgensen should be in the
we should be. Yeah, I'm happy to herald both of them. For many many reasons, not least of which is our shared nationality. Matteo Jorgensen, Sepp Kuss, either one of them. Who knows? We'll see. That's coming up on the men's side. The women's side has the Tour of Britain coming up on 6 days.
Different from Ride London.
That is different from Ride London. That's right.
Just
4 stages, Tour of Britain. A lot of Kopecky will be there. Lorena Vivas will be there. It's going to be a variety of different types of stages, so that's exciting.
I heard that there was a special super team of British riders because a bunch of other teams didn't want to go. Is this true?
Ooh. Well, there is a British national team at this race, and often there are national teams that have riders that aren't on the World Tour teams. They're not quite good enough. That's what you often get. I don't think you could say that is true for a team that has Lizzie Deignan, Anna Henderson, Eleanor Backstedt. Yeah, this is a pretty good national team.
I have not followed or dove into this as closely as I would like to, but I believe Brexit was cited as an issue for whatever reason. I didn't get the details, but it is, I think, unusual to see a stocked national team instead of a development national team. And I'm legit curious to see what they do in the race.
It does sometimes happen. You see it in the Italian one days at the end of the year. They're usually like second division races, and sometimes you'll get like this is an older reference to a few years ago, but you'll get like an Elia Viviani gets to go on the national team or Diego Ulissi, and then they win the race. But yeah, I think they're going to be a pretty strong national team here at the Tour of Britain, which goes, it doesn't just go. It's the Tour of Britain in that it at least covers Wales and England this year. First 2 stages in Wales: Welsh Pool de Llandudno, and then stage in Wrexham, and then Warrington, and then Manchester on the final day. So yeah, that should be exciting. That starts pretty soon. The first stage is on the 6th of June, so that's Thursday. So by the time we're recording again, it'll be over. Yeah. And then the Tour de Suisse on the men's side is coming up as well. That will be starting on the 9th. So that we will have 1 day of by the time we record again, Cosmo. And the Tour de Suisse, as you've mentioned, great opportunity to maybe catch some stuff that you don't always get to see. The start list this year does include, Swiss rider Mark Hirschi, member of the Visma Lease Bike Monster Energy Squad. So I'll be pulling for him here. Tom Pidcock as well, coming back to racing here with some big goals on his mind. He had the Tour de France's big goal this year, and then the Olympics. So Tour de Suisse coming up. We'll talk about it soon.
Did you just say Mark Hirschi was on Visma Lease Bike?
Visma Lease Bike Monster Energy. My fake team that I drafted for the placeholders draft.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I believe he's the highest scoring rider on my fake team, which is shocking. But he's done really well in a lot of second tier races. So yeah,
second tier races need a little more respect. I think I really enjoyed kind of going through the Lotto Cycling Cup and seeing some of the finishes in some of the racing. So
he's done really well in some of those Belgian Circuit Franco-Belge. Yeah.
I was going to say also a nice contrast between laissez-faire course preparation that you see in a small Belgian one day versus the really magnificently infrastructured racing you get at the Tour de Suisse.
Right. Yep. And with that, that's all we got today. I'm Dane Cash. Who are you? What was this?
I'm Cosmo Catalano, and this was the How the Race Was Won podcast.